I've never thought of myself as someone who needed much. A quiet place to sleep, a routine, to follow numbers, to organize, that was enough. I found comfort in balance sheets and predictable coffee orders. Life in Eugene wasn't exciting, but it made sense. The city was small enough to recognize familiar faces at the grocery store, large enough that no one stopped to ask how you were really doing. My apartment was the upper unit of a modest duplex near the river. 2 rooms, muted walls, and a window that caught the morning light just right. On Sundays, I watched the leaves gather along the sidewalk while I ate toast and reviewed my weekly budget. I didn't mind the stillness. It meant no drama, no noise. But stillness isn't the same as peace. Growing up, I learned early that love in my house came with asterisks. My father, Trent, made a career selling other people's dreams, crafting charm out of urgency, hiding flaws behind great bones. At home, though, his words always felt blunt, unfinished. My mother, Ruth, had been a teacher before she burned out and turned all her energy toward managing the family like a classroom. When she spoke to me, it was often with correction, not care. Then there was Dax. 5 years younger, but always 10 steps ahead in their eyes. He had the charisma I lacked. The grin, the stories, the effortless way he made everyone lean in when he talked. Dax didn't need to explain what he did, something in media, maybe marketing, but whatever it was, it sounded just ambiguous enough to impress strangers. At every dinner, I was the ghost at the table. Dax's stories led the conversation. My updates, a client audit going smoothly, a promotion. I didn't tell them I was aiming for, floated by unnoticed. My father once told me, "You're reliable, Calder." But reliable doesn't build empires. My mother said it differently. "You just don't shine, sweetheart." But that's okay. The world needs steady people. I told myself I didn't mind. Not really. I had my routines, my spreadsheets, my small wins. I told myself Dax could have the spotlight and I'd keep my pride in the shadows. But sometimes late at night, I'd stare at the blank ceiling above my bed and wonder what it would feel like to be chosen. Not out of duty, not for convenience. Just chosen because I mattered. I was on my 3rd cup of coffee when the call came. My mother's name lit up the screen like a trick of the light. "Calder," she said a little too cheerfully. "Your dad and I were talking. We'd love to have you over for dinner tonight. There's something we want to share." I stared at the phone for a moment after we hung up, unsure why my chest felt tight. They rarely invited me over without a reason. I grabbed my keys and my coat, telling myself not to expect anything. But I couldn't shake the feeling that for once they might be seeing me. My parents' house smelled like rosemary and lemon, the way it always did when my mother wanted things to feel welcoming. It was the same scent she used to dab into the corners of my childhood bedroom before relatives came over, as if the fragrance alone could suggest something warmer than reality. Dax was already there when I arrived, lounging across the couch like he owned the place. He flashed me a grin. "Hey, big bro. Been a while." I nodded, gave a polite smile, and took the seat farthest from him. Ruth emerged from the kitchen with a plate of cheese and crackers. She placed it gently on the coffee table like it was a centerpiece. "We've been thinking about something," she began, smoothing her blouse as she sat down. "Your father found a property out near the coast. It's perfect. 3 bedrooms, ocean view, a garden. Room for all of us." I looked between them, unsure what she meant by all. Trent leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "We've been wanting to be closer as a family. This place could give us a fresh start. You, me, your mother, maybe even Dax if his situation changes." Dax shrugged. "Timing's not great for me. Things are a little fluid." Ruth placed her hand on my knee. "But you, Calder, you've always been so good with your money, so responsible. We thought maybe you'd be willing to help make it happen." I already knew where this was going. "The property's listed at $690,000, Trent continued. "We've got a mortgage approved for $420,000. If you can contribute the rest, say $270,000, we can close by the end of the month." My breath caught. That number wasn't abstract. It was the exact amount I had managed to save over the last decade. All the skipped vacations, the car I kept running far past its prime, the nights I chose silence over comfort. "You'd have your own space," Ruth added quickly. "A proper room. Your name might not be on the deed for now, but this is a family home. What's ours is yours." For a long moment I said nothing. I looked at Dax, then back at my parents. They were smiling, hopeful, rehearsed. It should have felt off, but something in me still wanted to believe them. I said yes. The sun was still high when I pulled up to the condo. It looked even better than the listing photos: pale blue siding, white trim, a porch that caught the breeze from the nearby water. I had spent the last few days imagining this moment, unloading boxes, setting up my small room, maybe even having dinner with them on the back patio. Something simple, something shared. I rang the doorbell and waited, my overnight bag slung over my shoulder. Ruth opened the door. Her expression was not surprised, not warm. "Calder," she said, not moving aside. "Why are you here?" I blinked, unsure I'd heard her right. I brought my things. You said I'd have a room." She glanced behind her. Trent appeared in the hallway, arms crossed, face flat. "This is our home," he said. "You're not living here." My stomach dropped. "What?" "We agreed." "Dad, you said." Trent stepped forward. "You contributed. That was generous. But you don't live here." My throat tightened. "I gave you everything I had." Ruth's voice came in cool and measured. "And we're grateful, Calder. We thought you understood this was for the family. It was never about ownership. Don't make this ugly." I looked past them. Inside, I saw new furniture, moving boxes, half unpacked, a framed photo of Dax on the hallway wall. No sign there had ever been a room waiting for me. Trent's eyes sharpened. "You need to leave now. If you don't, I'll call the police." For a second, I couldn't move. My mind tried to find the mistake, the misunderstanding that would make this okay. But there was none. I turned, slowly, walked back to my car and sat behind the wheel for a long time before starting the engine. My hands shook. I felt like I had stepped into someone else's nightmare, except the pit in my chest told me it was real. As I drove away, the condo receded in the rearview mirror. My savings were gone. My place in the family, if it had ever existed, had vanished for good. I spent that night parked beneath a dim streetlight on the edge of a grocery store lot, wrapped in a blanket I kept in the trunk. And somewhere before dawn, I was woken by the sound of knuckles tapping on glass. I hadn't slept through the night in weeks. Even when exhaustion took over, it never lasted. My car seat dug into my back, the thin blanket barely held off the coastal cold, and my thoughts kept looping what I should have said, how I should have seen it coming, where I could possibly go next. The knock on my window came just past 2 a.m. My heart jumped. I sat up fast, wiping fog from the glass with the sleeve of my hoodie. A man stood just outside, hands in his coat pockets. He looked to be in his 60s, silver hair, sharp eyes, face-lined but steady. He didn't move aggressively, just tilted his head slightly and spoke through the window. "Calder Miles." I hesitated, my hand on the door lock. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. "My name is Jerome Klein. I was hired to find you." That didn't calm me. "By who?" He reached into his coat and pulled out a business card. "Private Investigation Services, Jerome Klein." He handed it through the cracked window. "Your grandfather wants to see you," he said. My mouth went dry. "That's not possible. My grandparents died years ago." Klein looked at me like he already knew I'd say that. "That's what you were told, but it's not true." I stared at him, unsure if this was some twisted scam or a hallucination born of sleep deprivation. "Why now I don't have the full story," he said. "I was paid to find you and deliver a message. If you want answers, you'll get them in Redwood Bluff." He handed me a folded slip of paper with an address written in tight block letters. Northern California, quiet place. "They're waiting." I looked down at the address, then back up at him. Why would my parents lie about that? Klein's expression didn't change. "That's between you and them." He turned to leave, then paused. "If you want to come, leave by sunrise. I'll be parked 2 blocks down." Black SUV. I watched him disappear into the shadows. I could have crumpled the paper, driven the other way, told myself it wasn't real. But I didn't. By dawn, my car was following taillights south. I didn't know where the road would end, but I knew I couldn't go back. The drive to Redwood Bluff felt unreal. Miles of winding roads, thick trees lining the shoulder like sentinels, and fog pressing in like memory. I didn't ask questions, and Klein didn't offer answers. He just drove, steady silent. When we pulled into the gravel clearing, I half expected the house to be empty, or gone, or never real to begin with. But it was there. A weathered wooden house nestled between towering redwoods, smoke curling from the chimney, a porch light glowing. Klein nodded toward the house. "They're waiting inside." I stepped out slowly, my legs stiff from the drive. The door opened before I reached the steps. A woman, silver hair tied back sweater sleeves pushed to her elbows, stood in the doorway. Her eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment neither of us moved. "Calder," she whispered. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. She stepped forward, wrapping me in an embrace before I could process it. Her arms were strong, shaking. "I'm Marin," she said into my shoulder. "I'm your grandmother." Behind her a man emerged, taller, slower, using a carved cane. His face was lined, but his eyes were sharp, familiar in a way that made my chest ache. "I'm Lyle," he said. "Your grandfather. You probably don't remember us." I shook my head. I thought you were dead." He nodded once, jaw tight. "We figured that's what your father told you." Inside the house was warm, lived in. Handmade quilts, framed photos of landscapes and animals, but none of Trent, nothing of Dax. Marin guided me to a chair and handed me a mug of tea I didn't remember asking for. Lyle sat across from me. "Your father cut us off 22 years ago. He took everything we had, our retirement, our home, and disappeared. We tried to find you, but he made sure we couldn't." Marin's voice was gentler. "We've been hoping. Just hoping one day somehow you'd find us, or we'd find you." I sat there, stunned, the weight of their words settling in pieces. I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to be good enough for a father who had lied to me about everything. And then quietly, Lyle said, "You can stay here, Calder, as long as you want." Life at the ranch slowed me down in all the right ways. I woke early, not from anxiety, but because Lyle was already in the garden, humming and turning soil with the calm precision of someone who'd rebuilt his world from scratch. Mornings belonged to finance. He didn't teach me theory, I already had that. He taught me instinct, where to look, what mattered. "It's not about chasing trends," he told me, "it's about reading people. A business is only as honest as the hands behind it." Afternoons belonged to the land, fixing fences, hauling compost, planting tomatoes with Marin. She treated every task like a ritual, even when it was small. In the kitchen, she cooked like she was writing a letter to someone she missed. She never asked questions I wasn't ready to answer. She just made sure there was always tea bread and quiet when I needed it. They never pressured me to stay, but something in the way they made room for me without conditions or approval kept me there longer each day. At night, we sat on the porch, the three of us, no words needed. I'd forgotten how it felt to exist without defending myself. One evening, after we repaired the old back gate, Lyle handed me a brass key to the shed, to the house, to what we've built. I turned it in my hand, unsure what to say. "You don't have to say anything," he said. "Just don't disappear." My first real win came quietly. A modest investment in a regional logistics company Lyle had been watching. He walked me through the fundamentals, dividends, leadership shifts, long-term positioning. I followed his advice, invested cautiously, and 3 months later saw a return. Small, but real. Something I had chosen and built on my own. It lit something in me. Soon after, I started helping a neighbor, a retired dairy farmer, struggling to manage his land lease income. Word spread. Within weeks, I was meeting with other local landowners, reviewing statements, helping them plan. No one looked at me like I was just a quiet man with a nice voice. They saw someone useful. Lyle let it unfold without praise. He just passed me thicker binders, more complex case studies, and sat back while I solved them. One evening, Marin handed me a folded envelope. He's not going to say anything, but he updated the trust. The house, the land, it's officially yours and mine. Just so you know. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. That same week, Lyle asked me to help him record a video. We sat in the shed, him facing the camera, speaking plainly about Trent, the betrayal, the money. "If anything happens to me," he said, "this tells the truth." It unsettled me, but I understood. We weren't just building. We were protecting it now. And for the first time, I didn't feel like someone who'd been rescued. I felt like someone who was rising. The article was small, just a few paragraphs at the bottom of the page, but it was enough. It mentioned the consulting I'd been doing, the support Lyle had given me, and a brief quote about rebuilding legacy through resilience. I didn't think much of it. Lyle smiled when he read it, nodded once, and went back to his coffee. But a week later, the past arrived at our gate. Trent's truck kicked up a cloud of dust as it pulled in. Dax was in the passenger seat, sunglasses on, chewing gum, like he was waiting for a photo op. I was in the shed when I heard Marin's voice, firm and sharp in a way I'd never heard before. "You need to leave," she said. Trent leaned on the gate. "We just want to talk. We heard Calder's doing well. Thought maybe the family could reconnect." Dax smirked. "Nice setup you got here, bro." Lyle came out with his cane, slow but steady. "This land isn't yours. You gave that up a long time ago. We're still family," Trent said, his voice tightening. "You can't lock us out forever." "We just did," Lyle replied. Marin called the sheriff. By the time the deputies arrived, my father and brother had already turned around, but not before Trent muttered, "You'll hear from us soon." And we did. Letters, thinly veiled threats, demands for a fair share of the estate, a handwritten note from Dax asking for a small loan to get back on his feet. I filed them away one by one in a drawer I labeled Unopened History. I didn't respond, but I knew they wouldn't go quietly. And I was right, because the next time they came back, they wouldn't come alone. It was a Tuesday. Lyle had gone into town for feed and to pick up some irrigation parts. He insisted on going alone, said he needed the quiet. He never made it home. The deputy knocked on our door just after dark. The words didn't register at first: accident, single vehicle, no sign of braking. I sat beside Marin as she folded her hands in her lap, silent. Her eyes were dry, but something in her face had gone blank, like someone had turned off the lights inside her. The funeral was quiet. A few neighbors, a local pastor, and the wind through the redwoods. I stood at his grave, feeling like I was holding something fragile I couldn't keep from breaking. But something didn't sit right. Lyle was careful, methodical. He didn't speed. He maintained his truck like it was sacred. I hired a private investigator, told him not to report anything until he was sure. 2 weeks later, he came back with grainy footage from a gas station near the crash site. A dark SUV parked just down the road the night before. The plate was unreadable, but the make, the color, it looked exactly like Trent's. The investigator shrugged. Could be a coincidence. Nothing conclusive. But I didn't believe in coincidences anymore. Marin barely spoke for days. When she finally did, her voice was quiet but certain. He wouldn't have lost control, Calder. Someone wanted him gone. I didn't respond. I just looked out the window toward the shed where we used to sit together, charts pinned to the walls, coffee cooling beside his hand. They'd taken him. Maybe not by law, maybe not by proof, but by pressure and greed and years of pushing. And I wasn't going to let them take anything else. I sold the ranch in silence. No public listing, no attention. Just a quiet transfer to a local couple who promised to keep the land, as it was no developments, no changes. I transferred every asset into a trust so tight Trent couldn't pry it open with a crowbar. Then I packed what was left, and Marin and I left Redwood Bluff behind. Astoria was slower, saltier, with streets that curved like memory. I bought a small cottage overlooking the water and let Marin choose the curtains. She picked soft blue ones that reminded her of Lyle's eyes. I opened a small finance center downtown, nothing flashy. A few desks, an open-door policy, and a name stenciled in gold across the glass, the Redwood Fund. We offered free budgeting classes for seniors' microloans for local startups and patient advice to anyone who walked in confused and tired like I once was. I didn't tell anyone about Trent. I changed my number, shut down the last account that had my old address, and erased the last trace of their name from anything tied to mine. Marin found peace in the garden behind our cottage. Some days she hummed the old tune I remembered from the ranch, soft and steady. Other days we just sat saying nothing. I didn't want justice anymore. I wanted distance, and for the first time I had it. Then, one afternoon, as I was locking up the center, I saw a letter slipped under the door. Marin stood beside me, her hand tucked gently into the crook of my arm as the waves folded into the shore. The sky burned orange, the last light sinking into the horizon. I thought of Lyle, his steady voice, his patient eyes, the way he never rushed anything that mattered. "Legacy isn't what you pass down," he once told me. "It's what no one can take from you." I closed my eyes and let that settle in. Not a weight, but a grounding. The world was still broken in places, but I wasn't. Not anymore. I was home,